Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining our session today. My name is Bertina Ceccarelli and I'm the CEO of NPower. I'm so pleased that nearly 500 of you have registered for this webinar from over 31 states. The recent events around this country are provoking conversations and actions we haven't had in a long time, if ever. The racial tensions that have been sparked by the killing of George Floyd and so many others have exposed deep wounds in our society from a long history of trauma and injustice. And the devastating impacts of COVID-19 on communities of color further underscore the inequities in our society. Our country is in need of real change and of real healing. And we at NPower are energized that the protests and the resulting actions will actually spark the dismantling of systemic racism, and we're prepared to do our part. Tomorrow is Juneteenth, and it's a day that represents the end of slavery in the US, and NPower is celebrating that day by giving all of our employees the day off for reflection and to support and honor those for whom racial injustice is still a reality. And if our poll is open, and I see it's not, but I would encourage that if any of you would like to share, even in the Q&A box, what you are doing to celebrate Juneteenth, we'd love to hear that. Before I commence this important and relevant conversation about how we can collectively support young women of color in their careers, I want to acknowledge my own privilege as a white woman and share my organizational and my personal commitment to listening, learning, and acting to challenge the status quo. Now, by way of brief background, I want to say just a few words about the mission of NPower. We are a national nonprofit that's moving individuals from poverty to the middle class through tuition-free technology training, industry certifications, power skills, social supports, and social capital and employment. And that employment is, of course, the most important piece. And oftentimes in our model, that employment follows a paid internship or an apprenticeship. NPower happens to also be a US Department of Labor registered apprenticeship program. And for over a decade, we've really committed ourselves to two primary populations: young adults from low-income communities who are generally 18 to 25, and veterans and their spouses. Program is rigorous and it's holistic. We focus on fundamental technology skill building that leads to good middle skill jobs across the sector. And we do so in close partnership with our employer allies who volunteer, mentor, and guest lecture throughout our program. And our vision is really simple. We want a future where our technology workforce is diverse and clear pathways exist for all people, regardless of ethnicity, gender, or socioeconomic background, so all can succeed in our digital economy. Today, I am joined by an impressive panel of women who will share highlights from our research report called Breaking Through, Rising Up, Strategies for Propelling Women of Color in Technology, that launches today. Joining me is a supporter, funder, and visionary, and the Senior Program Officer at Citi Foundation, Tia Hodges. Tia is focused on strategies that help young people link education and workforce goals with leadership training, professional networks, and on-ramps to employment. And representing the voices of our students is a powerful young woman, Daney Forbes. Daney graduated from NPower in 2018 and is now flourishing as an associate IT business analyst at Citi, where, among other functions, she manages the legacy IT platform transitions for the company. And on top of all that, she's currently enrolled at Brooklyn College pursuing her bachelor's degree. And finally, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Seema Shah, the author of this report. Seema's career spans 2 decades in the academic, nonprofit, and philanthropic sectors. She is a clinical community psychologist whose research has delved deeply into diversity and inclusion, urban education, community organizing, women's rights, and youth development. Over the next hour, you'll hear the Citi Foundation's perspective on why this work is crucial, highlights from the research, those themes brought to life by Daney's experiences, and finally, actions and recommendations. We'll reserve 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions, and I would encourage you throughout this presentation, please note your questions in the Q&A box below. The premise of our work at NPower is undergirded by three simple facts. First, every company is a tech company. It has job roles that require technical skills and not enough qualified candidates to fill those roles. And arguably, that reality will continue to persist even in a post-COVID labor market. The tech industry, like so many sectors, has a diversity problem. Women of color represent shockingly less than 10% of the tech workforce. And not only are Black and Latinx women underrepresented, but often underappreciated. Finally, there are far too many young adults, in particular, who lack the access to the skills development that's required to have equal access opportunities to employment within the tech sector. So all of this really led over the past 2 years with the support and partnership of Citi Foundation to study that pivotal period between the completion of high school and entry into the workforce, where so many young women of color slipped through the cracks, and act on our findings through a special initiative we call 40 by 22. We had two program goals. First, to substantially increase the number of women of color in our programs, and to increase the representation of women on our teaching staff to 40% by 2022, hence the name 40 by 22. We went into this knowing that those were hugely ambitious goals. And at the time of launching this initiative, young women represented only 25% of the students in our program, and we only had one instructor at the time who was female. To date, fast forward 2 years later, at the intersection of gender, race, and class in the technology industry, we feel that that intersection has gotten very, very little attention. But through this initiative, we've been able to increase the enrollment of young women in our program 105%, and we have helped 378 women launch tech careers. And importantly about that number, 44% of those who came to our program were unemployed at the time of enrollment. And the average salaries of the young women who graduated, and these are starting salaries for those women graduating from our entry-level Tech Fundamentals program, $42,500. That's a threefold increase over the salaries of the women who were employed at the time of enrolling in the NPower program. Those, in fact, who went on to take our more advanced credentialing programs in fields like cybersecurity and cloud computing, on average, are now making $77,000, and that is with the majority of our female students without college degrees. We've had a tremendous increase in the number of female instructors who we have brought on staff, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. We are happy with these statistics. We feel like we've made a lot of progress, but clearly our work is not done. But I just want to pause for a moment and say that the accomplishments over the past 2 years have largely been done with the support of one significant funder. And I would just ask those who are on the call today to imagine what we can accomplish collectively if we all lock arms and collaborate on this type of initiative going forward in the coming 2 years as we approach 2022. Tia Hodges Citi Foundation came to this work with a shared set of values and beliefs. And I think it would be terrific, perhaps, if you could share a bit more about your signature initiatives and what drove your investment in 40 by 22, and the recognition that we need to be more focused as a society, as a sector, at the intersection of race, gender, and income in this tech field. Tia?
Thank you, Bertina. For some reason, I'm unable to start my video. So without further ado, hold on for just a second. And there we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Bertina. It's so good to be here with everyone. Hope everyone is well and safe and staying healthy. The Citi Foundation is very proud to partner with NPower on the 40 by 22 initiative. our investment in 40 by 22 and NPower is part of the Citi Foundation's Pathways to Progress initiative, which focuses on young people and on helping young people secure workforce skills and connect them to employment and career pathways. We started this journey internally at Citi in 2017, really doing an analysis of the Pathways to Progress portfolio, or rather our Youth Economic Opportunity portfolio, and trying to identify additional ways in which we can make investments that drive impact in communities across the US. We touched upon or discovered, like so many of you out there, that technology or the tech sector really wanted and needs diversification, and that Black and Latinx women in particular were often locked out of employment opportunities or the access to education where the tech sector is concerned. According to Global Citizen, investing in women and girls, it creates long-term social and economic benefits for all individuals, their communities, and the world as a whole. And understanding that research and the ripple effects in communities across the US, if we chose to invest in women and women of color in particular, specifically noting working with Black and Latinx women, we really felt through this particular investment, we would have a really big impact. Given Citi and the Citi Foundation's long history of working with NPower, it was a natural fit or alignment to take what we've done in the past, drive an intentional approach or strategy to focusing, one, on the tech sector, and second, focusing on women of color, third, specifically Black and Latinx women, although 40 by 22 serves all women of color, engages and recruits all women of color. We view our investment in NPower and 40 by 22 as a laboratory of innovation. We're able to go deep in one particular area for a sustained period of time. And as Bertina mentioned, we've been doing this work for the last 2 years. And so the research report and the impact report details the results of this investment. And Bertina already spoke to some of the impact that we've been able to see. NPower's program is a long-standing pipeline of diverse talent for the tech industry, and Bertina is right when she says all companies are a tech company. Every company, organization, nonprofit including, needs expertise the kind of expertise that NPower creates through their classrooms. They've also helped to launch thousands of young people and their careers in the tech sector. We also felt, in addition to the focus on young women of color in the classroom, what was really important and what research has also indicated is that if you can see it, and that is really important. So when we started our discussions with NPower in November 2017, which seems so long ago, but not really, the investment in young women of color, not only in the classroom, but also in their Instructors Institute. And that has gone a long way, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation, but has gone a long way to ensure that women see themselves in the classroom and themselves in the tech sector. So Bertina, if you could talk a little bit more about the Instructor Institute and provide some background on that.
Yeah, sure, Tia, thank you. We founded the National Instructor Institute in 2017 with the support of the Daney Foundation and under the leadership of Robert Vaughn, really for two reasons. First, to serve as a center of innovation, to lead rapid curriculum development that could respond to the ever-changing needs of the labor market for the corporate partners we work with most closely, but also to attract, retain, and importantly, develop a diverse set of instructional talent who can be role models for our students. Instructors just play an outsized role in our program and most certainly in the achievements of our students, especially when it comes to certification rates. Technical competency, we believe, is deeply important, but so is cultural competency, and a phrase our colleague Robert Vaughn at the Institute has coined, cultural confidence. And we believe that those are factors essential to serving our students best. As I mentioned, when we launched 40 by 22, we had but one female instructor, Today we have 10, 9 of whom are women of color. And we are on a path today. This represents about 30% of our instructional staff. We're on a path to get to our 40% number actually in the coming months. So we think we'll beat that 20 by 22 date, but it's certainly a work in progress. And we're really pleased with the women who have chosen to become a part of the NPower instructor faculty. And they've just brought an enormous amount of energy and passion for our students and for the work. Tia?
Yeah, that's amazing, Bertina, and really excited for the Instructor Institute and all that you and team are doing to ensure that you're not only offering cultural relevancy to NPower students, but also an important employment opportunity to alumni. The partnership with Citi Foundation and NPower works because we are all focused on diversity and inclusion and ensuring that the tech talent pipeline includes women and women of color in it. NPower over the course of the last year and a half has held 3 convenings around the country, and these convenings allowed them to unpack the very topics that the research speaks to. They were real conversations, unapologetic, and sometimes uncomfortable. But I think 40 by 22, elevating uncomfortable conversations has really allowed us collectively to drive important impact in this particular sector. Those events helped us to see the great work that is happening in pockets across the country. So that was really the in-person convenings were a really important value add to the conversation, but also most importantly to the research. We believe the research provides a roadmap for organizations like yours, serving young women of color, and has the potential to really spark widespread change in the mindset and practice in the tech knowledge economy sectors. So let's take a look at some of the highlights from the convening events.
That intersection of gender, race, and ethnicity that women of color face, and there are some unique challenges that come with that.
The Wall Street Journal Women in the Workplace study that came out with McKinsey 2 weeks ago, they literally are saying, pay attention to women of color, specifically Black women, Latinx women, women with disabilities, and LGBTQ women.
Why is that?
Because they're saying we're not having the same experience. I need you to acknowledge that my journey is different in corporate America than different in your journey.
If we are going to truly change how corporate America looks, companies are going to have to understand who we are at our core. They're going to have to understand that we want to be invited to the table and made to feel like we deserve to be there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Seema Shah. I'm a researcher and consultant. It's great to be here with you today. I had the tremendous privilege of working with the NPower team to produce this report. So during this year-long study, I surveyed more than 1,000 students and alumni and conducted interviews and focus groups with nearly 100 other stakeholders, including NPower staff, employers, researchers, practitioners from other practitioners from other technology programs. So I'm going to take a few moments now to walk you through some of the highlights of our research. I really want to ground our research findings by lifting up the broader structural factors that we know affect women's engagement in technology training programs. So poverty, lack of representation, and discrimination are all day-to-day realities that can affect women of color's experience in technology training. So the lack of women, especially women of color in technology, often means that women of color don't even consider tech as a viable career path. When they do, we consistently hear that many women struggle with imposter syndrome, so a feeling that they don't belong. We also want to acknowledge the ways in which sexism, racism, and classism are chronic life stressors for women in NPower's training program. And so NPower and other programs like it really need to be equipped to acknowledge these dynamics and provide support for women as they navigate these realities. And then finally, poverty is associated with things like lack of transportation, lack of broadband access, again, realities that programs need to be prepared to account for in their work. So while these structural realities can be challenging, they also play a role in what motivates women of color to pursue technology training. So we asked students and alumni, both male and female, what their motivations were for enrolling in NPower. Almost all of the female respondents, 90%, said that they were motivated by an interest in technology. Around 2/3 said that a desire to get on a career track was an important factor. Now, this actually wasn't that different from what we heard from male students, but what was interesting in the follow-up interviews we conducted with female students is that many of them had an informal and untapped interest in technology because they either did not have access to technology coursework earlier in their educational pathway, or they were just sort of discouraged from pursuing technology as a career earlier on. So when it comes to recruiting and engaging women of color in technology training programs, one of the lessons that's very important for programs is to assess interest and aptitude in innovative and perhaps non-traditional ways. So instead of looking at coursework or past work experience, it may be that that programs look for other things. It could be that women are really into gaming, or that they have a knack for fixing cell phones, or just sort of a general aptitude for problem solving. So these are some of the different ways to assess if someone is potentially a good fit for a program. So while both male and female students had similar motivations for enrolling in NPower, we found that once they were in the program, female students experienced a different set of challenges and experiences. So difficulty managing financial commitments was the top challenge cited by both male and female students. But female students were more likely to have their own personal health challenges, and they were more likely to have caregiving responsibilities, not just for their own children if they happen to be parents, but also for older relatives, for siblings, for their partners. So given that women are facing different challenges within the program, we offer a number of recommendations for supporting women of color in technology training. So first, it's important to ensure that the organization and training program is consistently building a strong culture of equity and inclusion. So this includes being explicit about values, hiring and retaining diverse staff, and a commitment to ongoing professional development for staff to be aware of how bias shows up in their work and what they can do to mitigate bias. Second, we encourage programs to be intentional about their support for women of color throughout their programs. So to have clear goals for recruiting and retaining women of color, and to integrate targeted strategies that center women of color in each program component. And that includes recruitment, social support services, instruction, and job placement services. So in the report, you'll find a variety of concrete strategies, everything from making sure that marketing materials are inclusive of women of color, to creating peer support groups specifically for women of color. So I know Bertina's gonna talk a little bit more later on about what NPower is specifically doing in each of these areas, but I also want to touch on a couple of other research findings first. So the report also includes findings about life after NPower. And we were pleased to find that the average salary for NPower alumni in their first 2 to 3 years of employment is $55,000. And importantly, there are no significant differences between male and female alumni. We also found that program graduates, especially women, pursue a variety of pathways in technology. So ranging from IT desk support to coding and development to project management in a variety of industries and sectors. So this is really a testament to the diversity of careers available to graduates and the ways in which NPower equips them to pursue these paths. So when we asked about experiences in the workplace, again, we were pleased to find that both women and men reported generally positive experiences. they felt like they had a sense of belonging and inclusion within their organizations. They felt like there were opportunities for networking and mentorship. At the same time, we found that female alumni were 3 times more likely than male alumni to report experience with bias. And so this really shows that despite many of the strides that employers have made in creating an inclusive workplace, that there's still a lot of work to be done. And again, in the report, you'll find some ideas of what a culture of equality can really look like in the workplace. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later as well. But for now, I'd like to pause and turn it over to Daney Forbes. Again, Daney is a graduate of the NPower program, and she's currently working at Citi as an IT business analyst. Daney, can you talk a little bit about your reactions to the research and also share your own personal story?
Absolutely. I am just trying to start the video. Hello, everyone. I want to thank NPower for this amazing opportunity. I've always had an interest in tech, but I wasn't sure how to get started. I took a couple college courses at Brooklyn College, but it was dense and not really hands-on. So I started looking at other opportunities where I could break into the tech industry, specifically boot camps online and things like that. But there were a number of factors that prevented me from getting started. First, it was financial stability and a lack of access and opportunities. I grew up in Brooklyn. It's me and my sister. We lost our mother by the time I was 8 years old, and my father later when I was 18. So we were just trying to always navigate through life and take care of each other as best as we could. I was working at Trader Joe's before I found NPower. Incredibly long shifts. I was working full time, not really sure what I wanted to do career-wise. I was studying accounting, but trying really hard to break into tech, but couldn't find the right way to get into tech and find out what part of it I wanted to be in. I didn't have any mentors to help guide me. I found NPower online when I was looking for free boot camps, and I applied. The application process was seamless. It assured me that you didn't already have to be a genius and have technical skills. You could just apply and they'll teach you everything that you need to know. But it's once you get into the program where the real challenge starts for me, navigating 40+ hours a week and all my other responsibilities with my family life. My sister has a son. We're trying to keep a roof over our head, and renting in New York is incredibly expensive, as many of you know. We tried everything we could, but we were even forced to separate to try to save money and move in together later. But the program, NPower, it taught me a lot about maintaining responsibilities and trying to strive for something better. It's one thing to get the hands-on instruction for the technical aspect of everything, but they had the social support, which really helped. Someone checking in with me weekly, making sure that work is not killing me, that I can still study, that I'm taking the time to breathe and see where I'm trying to go was incredibly helpful. NPower offered tutors as well if things got too hard. The best part about it was you're sharing an experience with people that are going through the same thing that you're going through, trying to navigate every day with all your responsibilities and striving to start a career. There's many programs out there, but none of them are promising to take care of your well-being and help you start something, help you build something. So I would really want to stress that college does not really offer that. Obviously, a degree can take you extremely far, but no one's crafting you for a career the way programs like these do. And the opportunity for networking cannot compare as well. I was able to meet tons of people throughout the industry that had stories similar to mine, and that helped me strive to build my career. Currently, I am an IT business analyst at Citi. I hope to get into cybersecurity, specifically cloud security. I just got into an advanced course at NPower to get my cloud computing certification and AWS Solutions Architect. As a woman of color, as a Black woman, I often worry about whether or not I belong in these corporate spaces. But it turns out I do. Once you're there, you're judged by your work. And it is a supportive system of people that can teach you things and help you learn and grow. I know that I belong because I bring the willingness to learn, and I'm always going to work as hard as possible. So once again, I'd like to say thank you to everyone.
Daney, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story this afternoon, for taking the time with us, and for being so candid and personal. Congratulations on your acceptance to the cloud computing program at NPower. You are a force of nature. You will go far, and we're just really happy to be on this journey with you. Thank you. Today's own story touches on themes that we hear from so many young women of color, themes that with the help of alumni and current female students that we have been able to learn from and respond to. The changes that we have made to our program, thanks to the learnings of women like from women like Daney, really fall into 4 categories, and I'll focus on recruitment, supports, instruction, and careers. And the changes that I'll refer to really are those that we've learned over the past 2 years with 40 by 22. But also make a couple of comments on how we see this program evolving in a post-COVID landscape. So first, really with recruitment, we realized we had to change up our marketing materials to be inclusive of women of color and use asset-based language as opposed to that felt of a deficit. We believe that women are attracted to our program, and others like ours already have a profound problem-solving and social problem-solving set of abilities and social navigation skills. But in our old recruitment materials, we really didn't do enough to signal the existence of those strengths. We also needed to do a better job to illuminate that careers in tech is not all about coding, and certainly not entirely bro culture. But that skills learned in our program could lead to a range of career pathways, from project management to systems and network management, cybersecurity, data science, and that tech doesn't necessarily mean you need to work for a pure play tech company, although some certainly would like to do that and want to do that. We offer those opportunities, but that tech is essential in banking, healthcare, education, retail, and entertainment. And so not only did all of that need to be reflected in our materials, but also in just orientations and in small group recruitment sessions where we could do a better job really explaining the range of options available to women, so that, as Seema mentioned early in the research, where somebody in the first instance might not think tech is for me, when they hear the range of options, realize that it's actually an ideal career, especially for people with strong problem-solving capabilities and detail orientation. We also recognized we had to do a better job deploying more of a community-based approach to our recruitment, particularly partnering with local nonprofits that served women. So, for example, here in New York, we have a terrific referral network with the Caribbean Women's Health Organization and the YWCA. In California, we recruit heavily from the San Jose Black Chamber of Commerce, and Yo Baltimore in that city. And that has become, it's really shifted the role of our recruitment manager to really seek out those partnerships in local communities. In terms of the social, emotional, and professional supports, while wraparound services have always been a critical part of our program model and really central to the success of our students completing the NPower program, We've long partnered with organizations in our various communities where we have a presence to provide housing, childcare, healthcare needs, which consistently come up. But we also learned that women in particular were in need of emergency cash grants from time to time. And while certainly our male students find themselves occasionally in need of cash grants, many women are heads of household or have caregiving responsibilities where that additional financial support can be incredibly urgent. And finally, the importance of role models and mentors has been acutely revealed in our program development through 40 by 22. Over the past couple of years, we worked closely with Citi and a number of other corporate partners to organize small executive roundtable sessions, largely with female IT professionals and our students who could have really honest and frank conversations about bias in the workplace, have honest conversations about what our students need to do to be able to successfully manage their careers once they have landed in that first job. These have been hugely powerful discussions where our students could see women like them succeeding. And through all of this, we've recognized the importance of launching a formal mentoring program, which we had in more of an informal way prior to 40 by 22, but that will be launching this fall. Seema mentioned the imposter syndrome, which really runs deep for so many of our female students. And our belief is that by launching a mentoring program, we can really help our students develop that social capital, really grow their confidence, so that by the time they get to the workplace and for a minimum of 6 months into their first job, that they've got that additional person they can talk to when they're feeling uncertain or unsure about their presence in the workplace and their path forward. Finally, in terms of instruction, one of the things that we did really for all employees at NPower is gender bias training. All of our instructors attended that session for a full day, really to help them evaluate and change their own behaviors in classroom management. So for example, we often found that our women students were all clustering in the back of the classroom, and our instructors have now become aware that it's important to have our female students sit closer to the front where they feel very engaged and more available and open for answering questions or asking questions. We also really asked our instructors to think about their own biases when they might call on people for presentations, for group projects, for answering questions in the classroom. And importantly, this kind of awareness training also provided a greater consciousness of the experiences of our transgender and non-binary students as well. We also began to do more small group learning, which we found to be a really effective strategy for our female students in building confidence. And finally, I'll say a few words on the career placement. We've had far more open conversations with our corporate partners over the past 2 years in particular, really about what it takes to develop and advance the careers of young women of color and the real value of internships and apprenticeships. And especially when joining predominantly male teams, quickly connecting our graduates to employee resource groups really contributes to the retention and performance of the students coming out of our program. So we can't really emphasize enough the value of those groups when they're executed well. Now, while we gleaned the majority of these insights prior to the isolation that we've all been subjected to through COVID, our program has been an in-person, high-touch model. But we think that the same principles are relevant in an environment where the instruction has become more virtual. In fact, we expect that post-COVID will move from an entirely in-person model to more of a hybrid combination of in-person learning and virtual instruction. We've learned that such a move will especially benefit our women students who often need greater flexibility, particularly for those who are caregivers. But I want to reflect on a really important point that Daney made, just around that sense of community and support that gets built When you are together in person as a cohort of students, together with the social support manager, with our instructors and the local team, and that's challenging to replicate in an online environment. So it's one of the reasons we believe the hybrid model is a way for us to take advantage of the good learnings that we've had the past few months in a virtual world, while at the same time still offering the support of in-person contact, and through that be able to serve 2 to 3 times more individuals as we look at this hybrid model beginning in 2021. Tia, I want to turn it over to you to see what reflections you might want to share on the partnership and how these findings have informed your work at Citi.
Yes, thank you, Bertina. I think the impact report and the research will speak for itself. It'll go a long way. I will call out a couple of things. One is intentionality. In terms of focusing on Black and Latinx women. So often we don't get a chance to focus specifically and drill down, but understanding the needs of the pipeline in terms of talent pipeline. I think our very intentional approach was a great call. It was necessary, and I think we will all be better for it. We've also been able to see that, and this was alluded to earlier in the presentation, that when we do center this work or have a focus on women, and understanding the ripple effects of when you invest in women and women of color in particular, that we see an increase in salaries, and we see that it stabilizes, if not propels, their ability or their salary and their ability to take care of their families. COVID is interesting because I think it has re-alerted us to all of the issues around inequality and the issues around making sure that you have livable, not only livable wages, but wages where you can sustain your family and just have a great environment in which to live and work. I would also say developing the next generation of women, Black and Latinx women in the tech and innovation economy, super important. Diversity makes all businesses better, and we need to develop the next generation of leaders. From a personal standpoint, when I see that young people are protesting and saying, do you see us? Do you hear us? We need your help. It is this particular initiative called to highlighting a really specific need, and it's our way of saying we see you, we hear you, and we want to help you enter the tech sector, not just enter, not just survive, but to thrive and secure those leadership roles that young women across this country have every right to access. I will say that the work that Citi Foundation and NPower has done is great. And it's important that it is a collective partnership with everyone on the call and everyone who's not on the call. So from across sectors, as well as the philanthropic and the nonprofit partnerships. I think that's super important. And as we like to say internally at Citi, we cannot take our foot off the pedal. We really have to keep our foot on the pedal and continue this work. The work does not stop at the research and the impact report. If anything, it drives us to move this vision, this movement forward in terms of intentional investment. I want to also say just a quick reflection on the emergency funds. One of the biggest learnings I, as a program officer, came out of this was, and we spoke about this with the NPower team, was the necessity to ensure that young women, but all NPower students have access to the funding necessary, even in an emergency, to ensure that they not only make it through the program, but graduate and can secure employment. That's been super important. And finally, because I know we want to have time for Q&A, I just want to say that an important aspect of the work that we do at Citi and Citi Foundation is to not just center our grants around $1 or a grant investment. Obviously, this was a 2-year, $1.64 million investment. We we also leverage the time, talent of our Citi colleagues in each of the markets where Citi has a presence, and that overlay with NPower. That has been intentional. It's been strategic across all of our Pathways to Progress partners, and it is a value add. It's a value add to NPower, but to be quite honest, it's more of a value add to the company because our employees gain so much from helping young people. Military veterans is also another key constituency of the NPower and Citi relationship, to ensure that our employees have an opportunity to give back where they live and work. And then when an NPower student is hired at Citi, they come into a community where they are known and supported and engaged. So I'm just going to touch on those couple of things and want to make sure that I turn it back over to Bertina.
Tia, thank you so much. And in fact, I think our partnership has really served as a blueprint for best in class, where what we have valued about Citi is most certainly the grant has been terrific in underwriting this work, but learning from you and as an employer, hiring officers, the chief technology officer, the CIO, at all levels, really getting the kind of feedback to help us improve our performance, our curriculum, and the preparedness of our students. I want to touch on, in fact, it's a great segue for some of the recommendations that we're offering for employers and practitioners, and then I'll turn it over to Seema to wrap up on the policy side and recommendations for funders. But many of the learnings that we've had through our partnership with Citi, I think, can be mobilized by other employers. And in the interest of time, I'll really just touch on a couple of these. But I think this notion of committing to ongoing professional development is absolutely critical, because it's we hear the expression from time to time, we hire for diversity, but we manage for assimilation. While it has been well documented, the business impacts of diversity and the financial acceleration of a business outcome, that all goes away when we manage for assimilation. And making sure that the professional development for the young women of color coming out of the NPower and similar types of programs is invested in, not just by that person's immediate supervisor, but by sponsors, by mentors, and by those who can lift up that young woman to give her stretch assignments, to give her more visibility within the organization, to help expose her to a range of opportunities that exists across the organization. That is not just the job of the Chief Development Officer. Everybody needs to be engaged in seeking those kind of opportunities for young women of color, for us to continue to have the foot on the gas pedal and to really accelerate and mobilize careers for these women. And I also would say that relevant to that as well is, of course, the benchmarks for equity and inclusion goals really need to be owned by everybody across the organization, not just the Chief Development Officer. The second slide that we'll turn to, recommendations for practitioners. I think one that I'd like to highlight here is this importance of partnership, especially recognizing that oftentimes it takes a range of services and surrounding to meet the needs of young women of color around particularly childcare, around housing and healthcare supports, where we saw that in the research as being one of the largest barriers in completing the program or even considering the program in the first place. We are an organization, while we're focused on tech training, we recognize access to healthcare may not necessarily be our core expertise, but there are plenty of organizations who are very good at that. So getting smart about finding our allies within any community and partnering with those organizations is an important part of the success of 40 by 22 and our work more generally. And I think, Seema, I'd like to turn it over to you to talk about some of the recommendations for funders and policymakers.
Great, thank you, Bertina. So we do have a few recommendations for funders. We know that women of color are systematically underrepresented in technology, that they're disproportionately in low-wage jobs, and that there's a shortage of skilled tech workers. So investing in technology training programs that target women of color and that provide later on-ramps into tech careers is one way to address all three of these issues. So we really call on funders to make strategic and impactful investments in technology training programs. We also know that technology training programs are most effective when they address the variety of needs that women of color have. So we encourage funders that are investing in programs to make sure that the support includes wraparound services that we know are crucial for successful program completion. And then finally, we also encourage funders to connect with and learn from one another. So if you're considering an investment, talk to funders like Tia, who have been supporting this work and have important lessons and observations to share. And if you're already investing, talk to peer funders about the innovation and outcomes that you're seeing. So in addition to thinking about what practitioners, funders, and employers can do, we also recognize that there are more systemic policy level solutions that are needed to tackle what we know is the leaky tech pipeline. So on the policy level, we call for increased funding for apprenticeship programs, which have traditionally focused on the trades, but there is really a huge opportunity here to support skill development in the digital economy and to allow young people to receive industry recognized credentials. We also call on new sources of funding for federal funding for technology training programs, including expanded eligibility for Pell Grants. We know from policy research that public subsidies for childcare are available, but they are severely under-resourced. So only 1 in 7 people who are eligible for subsidies actually receive them. So clearly this needs to change as well. We know that disparities in STEM education for Black and Latinx girls starts early in the pipeline, and so we also call for increased support in public education funding for STEM. And finally, we know that there needs to be ongoing attention to workplace protections, and so that includes expanded family leave laws and strengthened pay parity laws. There's been a lot of progress made on these fronts already, but a lot more needs to be done at the local, state, and federal levels on these fronts. So with that, I will turn it back over to Bertina for some additional comments and Q&A.
Seema, thank you so much. Before I open the floor to questions, I'd like to urge everybody in this call to do 2 things. First, please read the full report. You'll be able to download it at the URL you see posted on the page in front of you. But as importantly, join us. Join us in this mission to help advance the careers of young women of color in technology, and do that by joining a coalition. We're in the midst right now of launching what we're very excited about, a cross-sector coalition representing nonprofits, technology executives, companies, allies, funders, government, to join us to change the numbers, to get us from what is below 10% today to double that over the course of the next 5 years. You'll learn more about the development of this and the launch of this coalition in the coming couple of months. But I encourage you, when you visit npower.org/research, to sign up for updates, to learn more how you can become actively engaged and really to help support and mobilize this effort, because now is the time. There's never been really a more important time to focus on this issue, and we can't do it alone. So we need your support, and we look forward to working in partnership with those of you who are on this call and those of you who are not. We have a number of questions that have come to the chat box, and I really appreciate that we've got an engaged audience and lots of great queries here. One that I will start with, and many of these I'll read out and I'll turn to my fellow panelists to help answer. But one question I saw here was, how many students are you expecting over the next couple of years? And as a result, how many mentors do you need? And I think this is a perfect segue from the importance of a coalition. And if you think about the young adult work that we're doing, where we're focusing our efforts on 40 by 22, the young adult population we expect to serve in the next couple of years annually would be 1,000 to 1,500 students. As we reach that 40% goal of women of color, it means that we're going to need about 600 mentors annually. And I'm really pleased to say that we're working very closely with ITSMF, an organization devoted to the professional growth of Black technology executives, who will work with their membership to offer up mentoring opportunities for their members. But we're also looking for partners across the corporate sector to help us with that as well, including Citi, where we know that many of their professionals have already agreed and are excited about becoming mentors. So again, I would ask, when you visit the website, please sign up and let us know if you or your companies have an interest in joining our mentoring program. We also, let's see, how can an organization, without the financial support to invest, partner, connect, and engage with NPower students and alumni? Are there opportunities to partner for workshops, information sessions, etc.? And there's a resounding yes to that. And in fact, we have found incredibly productive relationships with organizations that hire our students, which is obviously an incredibly important part of the success of the model, but also who come to guest lecture and invite employees to share their personal career journeys. But I would turn it over to my fellow panelists and ask if there's any additional thoughts that you would add to that.
Hi. I think that students can also seek out mentors and foster a relationship. Sometimes you have to do that. It's easier, you know, when you're starting out a career, people are willing to help you. They're willing to share what they know. You just have to agree to meet with them on times that work for them, because they are busy professionals, and just build a relationship over time. Not only will you learn how to navigate the workplace, but you'll have somebody you can depend on as you start your career as well.
Today, thank you. And while you have the floor, there's a question here specifically for you. How has your role with Citi impacted you in your life?
Well, it's changed my life completely. Citi is incredibly supportive. The role, I'm currently in executive support now. The whole team, I ask questions all the time. At first I thought that I was annoying everyone, but you have to ask questions to get what you want. And you find that people, if you try something and you ask for advice because you're stuck, they will teach you different things. So my life has changed dramatically since interning there. I kept up with the people that I was working with, and then 8 months later I was working there. And it was not hard to transition because I was staying in touch with them. So that's incredibly important.
Today, it's also a tribute to your networking skills and ability to build your own social capital. I know that we are up at the hour at 2 o'clock. We'd like to continue this conversation. You will be hearing more about future events here at NPower, and specifically to continue the dialogue around advancing the careers of young women and women of color in tech. But I'd like to really end on just some thank yous and acknowledgements. Really, most importantly, to the students and alumni who participated in our survey, and the executives who agreed to be interviewed, friends and board members who have served on the review committee, and it was a lot of work, and thank you. New York Assemblywoman Latrice Walker, who advocated for making March 12th Women of Color in Tech Day in New York State. Suzanne Tedrick, author of the book Young Women of Color in Tech, and herself a fierce role model. Our network and referral partners in every region where we operate, certainly our corporate partners who hire our students and offer apprenticeships, the NPower staff for making the vision a reality, and an enormous thank you to Tia and the team at the Citi Foundation for helping us build out this program and change lives. Thank you. Thank you all for attending. Stay safe And thank you for being with us.